pull up a chair because we are diving into an ending that really, it shocked the world almost a century ago. And the deeper we look, the more heartbreakingly inevitable it seems.
Yeah, October 31st, 1926. Halloween. And the headline hitting the streets, crackling across the nation's radios. It's impossible. Harry Houdini is dead at 52.
You really have to process the magnitude of that news for a moment. I mean,
Yeah.
This was the man who had perfected the art of defying expectation and, well, seemingly defying death itself.
Absolutely. Escaping from a straitjacket while dangling hundreds of feet above Times Square.
Right, or picking the locks of maximum security safes dropped into icy rivers. He just seemed to hold this, personal standing appointment with the Grim Reaper only to stand death up again and again.
For millions, he really was the American folk hero, the Iron Man, the king of escapes. He embodied this belief that with enough ingenuity, enough training, enough sheer will, you could conquer anything.
Even the limits of the human body itself. He seemed untouchable, unbreakable.
So, yeah, what lock was too complicated? What watery grave finally got him?
And the irony is just brutal, isn't it? And it's why this deep dive really matters today.
It is. The official cause of death wasn't some complex trick gone wrong or a chain he couldn't break. It was diffuse peritonitis stemming from a ruptured appendix.
An ordinary death for a figure who had staked his entire global reputation on being anything but ordinary.
Exactly.
And that's the core of our mission today, really. We're unpacking that surface story, the unexpected sucker punch, to reveal how the legend of being invulnerable ended up becoming this cage that ultimately killed the man, Eric Weiss.
Yeah, we're going to trace the line from, say, the obsessive devotion he had for his mother.
Which was intense.
Oh, incredibly intense. Right through to the rigid personal philosophy that basically made him choose preserving the myth over preserving his own life.
Okay, let's unpack this. So to understand how the legend of Houdini became fatal, you first have to understand the man who created it, right? Eric Weiss.
That's right. He wasn't born into fame or privilege. He was born in Budapest, Hungary, son of a struggling Jewish rabbi who brought the family over to America, settled them in Appleton, Wisconsin for a bit, then eventually moved to New York.
And the family was poor. I mean, really poor.
Desperately poor.
Yeah, Eric grew up watching his father, the rabbi, kind of fail repeatedly to find success in this new world.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that really instilled in young Eric this lifelong determination to escape that poverty, that anonymity, and a determination that, kind of mirrored his later stage act.
That's a great point. His career was, in many ways, his escape from the confines of his own history, his own background.
And that drive was tied to these two sort of pillars in his emotional life.
Yeah, intrinsically tied. The first, and by far the most formative, was his mother, Cecilia. The source material describes her not just as, a loving figure, but his angel on earth. His guiding beacon. Wow. Yeah. Right. She represented safety, stability, and this pure, unquestioning love he just craved his whole life.
And his devotion to her was famously intense, right? Almost obsessive. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a dependency that defined his entire identity, even when he was this global superstar.
Oh, absolutely. That anecdote about the gold coins is incredibly telling, isn't it?
It really is. Tell us about that.
Well, when his vaudeville career finally took off and he was making real money, serious money, he wouldn't just write her a check. No. He insisted his salary be paid to him in heavy gold coins.
Just so he could.
Just so he could have the dramatic pleasure of pouring that wealth, like a literal shining cascade, right into her lap. It was this performance of success, of devotion, proving he'd finally escaped the family's poverty and could give her everything.
Wow. It's like a scene from a movie. And the physical relationship was just as intense, apparently.
It was. The sources mention that even when he was this massive, muscle-bound celebrity, world famous, he would still sometimes sit on her lap.
As an adult.
As a grown man, yeah. Seeking that physical reassurance, that calming influence she had on him when he was a kid. The novelist E.L. Doctorow called him one of the last great mother lovers, highlighting how this deep, almost primal dependency was really the psychological core of a man who otherwise projected total self-sufficiency, total control.
So that level of dependency means that the foundation of his identity was, it was basically external, wasn't it?
Exactly. When you rely so heavily on one person for your emotional anchor, their sudden removal isn't just a personal loss. It's like a spiritual catastrophe.
Okay, so that's pillar one. What was the second pillar?
The second pillar, a bit more grounded perhaps, but equally vital, was his wife, Bess, Wilhelmina Beatrice Rauner.
Bess. Right.
He met her when she was just a petite 18-year-old dancer at Coney Island back in 1894. And they got married within weeks.
Wow, weeks.
Yeah, whirlwind romance. But Bess was absolutely the co-creator of the legend. She wasn't just a supportive wife in the background.
No, she was essential, right? Stage manager, costume designer.
Everything. And critically, his assistant in their early, really famous trick, metamorphosis.
Ah, the trunk escape, where they'd magically trade places.
That's the one. He's bound and locked in a trunk, and instantly, bang, he's out and she's inside.
That trick required just absolute synchronization and trust, didn't it?
Completely. It wasn't just a metaphor for their partnership, it was a physical manifestation of it. He relied on her totally, professionally and personally. He called his mother and Bess his two sweethearts. They were the twin pillars holding up his entire meticulously constructed world.
And then the world ended for him.
Pretty much. July 17, 1913, Houdini's on tour in Copenhagen, Denmark. A transatlantic telegram gets delivered. Just two simple words on it. Cecilia was gone.
And the reaction. The Iron Man, the master of physical endurance, mental fortitude. He reads that message and just faints.
Fainted dead away. The physical recovery was quick, but emotionally shattered. He wrote later that he had received a shock from which I do not think recovery is possible.
It was a grief he never, ever overcame.
Never. And his immediate response was just driven by desperation. This bottomless grief pushed him, like so many others actually, after the tragedies of the Great War and the influenza pandemic.
Right, that context is important.
Very. It pushed him toward the burgeoning spiritualist movement. But for Houdini, this wasn't some general philosophical inquiry.
No, it was personal, deeply personal.
It was a desperate quest. He needed, above all else, to hear his mother's voice one last time, to prove that the anchor of his life was just hidden maybe, but not truly destroyed.
But the irony, of course, is that the world's greatest escape artist, the master of deception, walks into these darkened seance rooms.
And he immediately sees through the tricks.
Of course he does.
Absolutely. He knew how to hide things, how to make things vanish, how to manipulate the senses. So when he saw tables flowing on thin wires or that fake ectoplasm, often just cheesecloth and egg whites, the medium would regurgitate. Or the fake trumpet voices. He wasn't fooled for a second. He was outraged.
And this is where his professional focus really transformed, didn't it?
Completely. His professional duty, exposing parlor tricks, which he'd done for decades, suddenly became intensely personal. His mother's death turned this pursuit into what the sources describe as a raw, personal, holy war.
Was his fervor so extreme? Because he was basically confronted the exploitation of the exact hope he held in his own broken heart. Like, he wanted it to be real, but he knew it wasn't.
I think you've hit the nail right on the head there. He needed certainty. If the spiritualists were right, well, then Cecilia was reachable. That was one possibility.
The best possible outcome for him, emotionally.
Right. But if they were fakes, then they were exploiting his deepest wound, his most sacred memory. So by debunking them, he was doing two things. Protecting the grieving public, yes, but also kind of proving that his mother's final rest was, at least, genuine and dignified, not just fodder for some cheap show.
That internal conflict.
Yeah.
It really set the stage for the next phase of his life, didn't it? His absolute unyielding insistence on physical and intellectual invincibility.
Absolutely. Which leads us straight into these two wars he was fighting.
Right. So now we have these two parallel wars consuming Houdini's life, both demanding absolute physical and mental supremacy. First, there was the public war, fought every night on stage.
Yeah, designed to convince the world that Erich Weiss, the rabbi's son, had successfully, fully transitioned into the superhuman Harry Houdini.
And he needed a stage worthy of that superhuman image. You mentioned the 1920s brought the rise of the atmospheric theater.
That's right. These incredible spaces designed to transport the audience before the show even started. They had these deep blue domes, ceilings painted like a night sky with twinkling electric stars.
Wow.
And walls designed to look like Moorish gardens or Roman villas. The audience was already primed for the impossible, looking up at the stars as Houdini defied gravity and death down on the stage.
And central to that defiance was his ultimate showpiece, the Chinese water torture cell. Right. This wasn't just like picking a simple lock.
Oh, no. This was a terrifying, custom-made engineering marvel.
Tell us about it.
Well, it was built in England at great expense. Over $10,000 back in 1912.
Which is, what, today? Hundreds of thousands.
Easily. Made from the finest Honduras mahogany, reinforced with nickel-plated steel and brass. But the complexity wasn't just the apparatus itself, it was the sheer physical challenge.
He's locked upside down, feet in stocks.
Plunge headfirst into 250 gallons of water.
Just thinking about it.
And the suspense was absolutely weaponized. The orchestra would play this dramatic, drawn-out piece called The Diver. The audience, already holding its collective breath, just waits, sometimes for up to 2 minutes.
2 minutes underwater, upside down, locked in.
Yeah, until he bursts out. He wasn't just conquering a physical lock, he was conquering the most primal human fears. Drowning, suffocation, total helplessness.
And this public demonstration of superhuman control, it extended into his most famous and maybe ultimately most fatal challenge.
Ah, yes. The standing invitation for anyone, absolutely anyone, to punch him in the stomach as hard as they could.
This challenge, it wasn't just arrogance, was it? It was a core part of the myth.
It really was. He believed implicitly in his body, his superb musculature, as he called it, and he had a specific preparation technique for it.
Right, he had to brace himself.
Exactly. He would tense his diaphragm and abdominal muscles to create what he called an elastic muscle and diaphragm box. The idea was this box would absorb and distribute the force of any blow, protecting his internal organs.
It was like a physical testament to his whole philosophy.
Precisely. My chief task has been to conquer fear, he'd say. He suggested his physical prowess came from deep, torturous preliminary self-training. If he could withstand the hardest punch a man could throw,
Then he'd conquered human frailty itself.
that was the message. But the crucial caveat to this challenge, the thing that everyone, including tragically him, seemed to forget in the key moment,
Was that he had to be prepared, braced, ready.
that was everything.
Okay, so at the same time, he's waging this public war on frailty. He's waging this devastating private war against the spiritualists.
Yeah, the ultimate ghost-busting operation. And he carried it out with the same level of preparation and, frankly, guile as his escapes.
He'd go to seances in disguise.
Oh yeah, elaborate disguises. Sometimes as a gray-haired widow, sometimes just a curious skeptic, always hiding a portable electric torch somewhere. He used his knowledge of stagecraft right back at them. His mantra was, "It takes a flim-flammer to catch a flim-flammer."
He knew all the tricks, and the detail in his debunking methods is fascinating. He wasn't just guessing.
Not at all. He was incredibly methodical. Take the medium, Nino Pecoraro, who claimed spirits played musical instruments during his seances.
How did Houdini get him?
Simple, really. Houdini just arranged to have Pecораro's ropes tightened unexpectedly during the seance, just enough so he couldn't free his hands to play the instruments himself.
Brilliant. What else?
He exposed the Spaniard with X-ray eyes by finding this tiny, almost imperceptible gap in the blindfold that allowed the medium to peek down his nose. He even used common stage tricks, like dusting objects with lamp black to prove mediums were using their own hands to manipulate spirit objects in the dark. Or he'd feel under the table for a medium's foot, secretly tapping out code.
The stakes of this war were just enormous, weren't they? And they really culminated in that great public feud with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, the irony there is just, it's almost too perfect. The creator of the hyperlogical Sherlock Holmes being the world's greatest advocate for spiritualism.
It's baffling.
It really is the defining clash of logic versus faith in that era. Doyle, who was convinced of the existence of fairies and spirits, genuinely believed Houdini wasn't just a clever escape artist.
What did he think Houdini was doing?
Doyle actually proposed that Houdini was a powerful medium himself, capable of what he called dematerialization. Basically, that Houdini could make his physical body disappear to achieve his escapes.
As the world's foremost authority on very physical escapism, how infuriating must that have been? Someone just dismissing decades of hard, painful training as like some ethereal superpower.
Profoundly insulting, you have to imagine. But the breaking point, the absolute point of no return in their friendship and feud, came in 1922. Doyle's wife, Jean, who also acted as a medium,
She held a seance.
she did, and claimed to have channeled Houdini's late mother, Cecilia Weiss.
Oh, boy. And the message she delivered was, let's just say, not convincing for Houdini.
It was a disaster, an absolute disaster. The channeled message came through in flowing, perfect English, and to top it off, it included a drawing of a distinct Christian cross.
And Houdini knew immediately.
Instantly. His mother spoke only broken English, mostly Yiddish and Hungarian. And the family was devoutly Jewish. There was no way she would communicate with a cross. For Houdini, this wasn't just a mistake. It was a clumsy, insulting fraud. It exploited the memory of the person he loved most in the world.
So the gloves were well and truly off after that.
Completely. The public feud that followed cemented Houdini as the world's foremost debunker. But taking that stance, being that public about it, made him powerful enemies.
Chief among them, the infamous Boston medium Mina Crandon, right? Marjorie.
That's her. The Crandon case really raised the stakes dramatically. Marjorie Crandon wasn't just some small-time parlor medium. She had captured the attention of Boston high society and was a leading contender for a big prize, $2,500 offered by Scientific American magazine for proof of genuine psychic phenomena.
And Houdini was on the committee investigating her.
He was, and he deployed his most complex counter-strategies against her. He even designed this special confinement cabinet specifically to restrict her movements during seances.
And he successfully exposed her, finding ways she was secretly freeing a hand or foot to make things happen.
He did. But she didn't just fade away quietly.
No, she publicly cursed him, didn't she?
She did. She was known for these theatrical declarations, and she proclaimed publicly that he would be dead within the year.
Chilling, given what happened.
It is, and when you connect this to the bigger picture, you see the massive pressure Houdini was under. He wasn't just entertaining people. He felt he was waging this moral war against superstition, against exploitation. So the legend of invincibility wasn't just good for the box office.
It was essential for his credibility. As the ultimate arbiter of truth, the ultimate debunker, he couldn't afford to look weak, physically or intellectually.
Not for a second. Which brings us, under all that pressure, to the day the myth finally cracked.
October 26, 1926. The relentless pressure cooker of his life leads us right now to the precise scene of his vulnerability. It's Friday, October 26, 1926, backstage at the Princess Theatre in Montreal.
Yeah, let's really paint this picture clearly because the context here is just everything. The great Houdini was already compromised.
So,
Well, first, his dressing room. It was tiny, maybe 8 by 10 feet, chaotic, typical backstage clutter costumes, props, people coming and going. And second, he was not in peak physical condition. Far from it.
well,
He was actually reclining on a couch trying to rest a fractured ankle.
a fractured ankle from what?
He'd sustained it just a few days earlier during an escape stunt in Albany, New York. So picture it. He's exhausted, he's in pain from the ankle, and he's distracted.
Okay, so he's lying there trying to muster energy for the evening show. And there's an art student there.
Right. A young man named Sam Smilovich was sketching his portrait. And then a visitor arrived. Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead.
Whitehead. Now, sometimes the legend makes him sound like a young kid, but he wasn't, was he?
No, not at all. He was 31 years old, a large, kind of heavy-set McGill University student. Eyewitnesses described him as awkward, persistent, and really singularly obsessed with one topic.
Let me guess. Houdini's legendary ability to withstand punches to the stomach.
You got it. Whitehead was actually there to return a book Houdini had lent him, but the conversation immediately turned to the challenge. He asked Houdini point blank, "Is it true, Mr. Houdini, that you can resist the hardest blows to the stomach?"
And Houdini's still lying down,
Yeah.
distracted by his ankle.
Clearly not expecting an immediate demonstration, just casually confirmed, yeah, he could, but crucially, he added that he needed a moment to brace himself first.
And this is it, the critical, fatal mistake. The instant where the legend just completely betrayed the man.
Absolutely. Before Houdini could even begin to stand up, before he could tense those famous abdominal muscles, while he was still stretched out and vulnerable on the couch, Whitehead leaned in and delivered not one, but 4 or 5 punches.
And these weren't light taps.
No. Witnesses describe them as tremendously strong, purposeful, well-directed strikes, or even hammer-like blows.
What did the witnesses see? Smilovich, the artist?
They were shocked. They saw the great Houdini wince sharply. Smilovich later said his face contorted in extreme pain. He gasped and immediately frantically gestured for Whitehead to stop.
And the position was key, wasn't it? Being hit while reclining.
Medically, that was disastrous. Later analysis confirmed that striking the abdomen when the muscles are relaxed and the person is lying down just exponentially increases the risk of serious internal injury. The organs have nowhere to go.
So a normal person, even a normal performer, would have immediately stopped everything, right? Called for a doctor, canceled the show.
Absolutely. But Houdini wasn't a normal performer in that sense. He was bound by the legend he'd created.
To admit injury, to admit vulnerability, especially in front of these students who already saw him as superhuman.
Was to admit the myth was a lie. And he couldn't do that. He chose the legend. He literally swallowed the pain, brushed off the incident, and then continued chatting with the students for nearly an hour.
An hour. While potentially seriously injured.
Yeah, concealing the severity of it even from Bess, apparently, for several critical hours.
And inside his abdomen, this perfect storm was brewing.
Exactly. He was very likely already suffering from acute appendicitis, possibly just on the verge of rupturing. It was a common condition back then. Those hammer-like blows almost certainly provided the mechanical force needed to cause the already inflamed appendix to rupture.
Starting the whole deadly process of infection and sepsis.
Right, but instead of getting emergency surgery right there in Montreal, what did he do?
He focused on the box office. He performed.
He performed his full, grueling 2.5-hour show that night, despite what must have been immense and building pain, and then he did it again the next day.
Unbelievable. And then he got on a train.
Then he boarded the Canadian Pacific Railway's Chicago Express.
Imagine that train journey. 15 hours, 20 minutes to Detroit. It must have been just agonizing. A countdown.
You have to think so. In the confined space of that sleeper car, the reports say he was suffering these bed-shaking chills, his fever spiked, just enduring the rhythmic clatter of the train wheels, which must have sounded like a drum beat counting down his final hours.
Was it on the train he finally admitted how bad it was?
It seems so. It was only during that awful transit, when the pain became just excruciating, completely undeniable, that he finally confessed the full story of the punch and his escalating symptoms to Bess.
And when the train finally pulled into Detroit?
The legend was already defeated. His temperature was dangerously high, 104 degrees Fahrenheit.
A doctor was waiting.
Yes, a Dr. Leo Dretzka. He was waiting and examined Houdini immediately, right there in the dressing room of the Garrick Theater. The diagnosis was instant and stark.
Acute appendicitis.
Requiring immediate hospitalization, no question.
The show must go on.
But the house was sold out. They'd taken in $15,000 in tickets, a massive sum back then, nearly his annual income from just decades earlier. The crowd was waiting. The legend had one final impossible demand.
And sealing his own fate, Houdini ignored the doctor's pleas, uttering those final, tragic words.
"I'll do this show if it's my last."
And he tried.
He struggled through the first act, burning with fever, racked with infection, fighting with a willpower that even his body couldn't sustain anymore. As the curtain fell for the intermission, the invincible Harry Houdini collapsed. He would never perform again.
He was rushed to Grace Hospital in Detroit, admitted to room 401. The master of escaping all man-made locks was now trapped in the ultimate, inescapable cage, a hospital bed.
Yeah, a sterile white room. And the surgeons, well, they found an absolute biological disaster inside him.
The appendix.
It was gangrenous. It had clearly ruptured days earlier, most likely on that horrific train ride. He had a massive, overwhelming case of diffuse peritonitis. And here's the crucial medical context that really made this a death sentence.
It was 1926.
Exactly. Years before penicillin, years before effective systemic antibiotics.
So once that infection, sepsis, set in and spread throughout the abdominal cavity.
There was very, very little the surgeons could actually do. Despite 2 desperate surgeries, basically trying to drain the infection, even trying an experimental serum, the infection just overwhelmed his system.
The world was watching, though, right? Still captivated by the man who had cheated death so many times, holding its breath for one last impossible escape.
Everyone was. And naturally, the murder theory sprang up almost immediately.
Did Mina Crandon's curse actually work?
Right. Or was J. Gordon Whitehead some kind of assassin sent by the angry spiritualists Houdini had debunked?
It makes for compelling theater, doesn't it? The conspiracy.
It does. But the historical evidence consistently dismisses those theories. Whitehead was never charged with anything. He died years later, apparently a guilt-ridden, malnourished recluse, just fading into total obscurity.
So the powerful, yet maybe far simpler, truth is,
he died because he couldn't stop being Houdini.
If he had just been Eric Weiss that day in Montreal, a tired man with a fractured ankle,
he would have called the doctor. He almost certainly would have survived. But he had built this cage of invincibility around himself, brick by brick, escape by escape. And when he was forced to choose between saving the life of the fragile man inside and preserving the continuity of the unbreakable legend, he chose the legend.
There was a doctor years earlier who warned him, wasn't there, about his lifestyle, the extreme stunts.
There was. Warned him it was potentially suicidal. And Houdini's only reply was the ultimate encapsulation of the legend. You don't know me.
Wow.
But on the afternoon of Halloween, 1926, after fighting the infection for an entire week, That iron will finally broke.
His family was there. Bess, his brother.
Yes, Bess and his brother Theo were by his side. He whispered his final words. A tragic admission of defeat that the public, the fans who believed him invincible, never got to hear.
What did he say?
I'm tired of fighting. I guess it's going to get me. He died just a short time later at 1:26 p.m.
But even death itself was planned as the setup for his final great experiment, wasn't it?
It was. Before he died, the ultimate debunker made this solemn, coded pact with Bess.
The idea being, if it was possible to communicate from beyond the grave, he would be the one to do it.
Exactly. He would send a secret coded message that only she could decipher. That would be the proof, the ultimate proof that the spiritual claims were real or weren't.
And the code was specific, 10 words long.
10 words. The first word was Rosabelle. That was the song Bess sang when they first met. The title was even engraved on her wedding band.
And the other 9 words?
They were a coded sequence they had used years earlier in their old mind-reading stage act. When properly deciphered, those 9 words spelled out a single powerful word: believe.
Rosabelle, believe. That was the message.
That was a message, the ultimate litmus test for the afterlife.
So for 10 long years after his death, Bess held seances every Halloween, right, on the anniversary.
Every single year. With a single candle burning beside his photograph. She needed that message. You can imagine how much. But as the decade went on, nothing.
Lots of charlatans claimed contact about.
Oh, constantly. All over the world. A ghostly appearance reported in Chicago. A message supposedly delivered via tea leaves in New Zealand. But none of them, despite the intense global focus on this pact, none of them ever delivered that precise 10-word code.
That wait must have been excruciating for her. A testament to their love, but also maybe to how deeply the spiritualists' claims had wounded both of them.
Absolutely. Finally, on the 10th anniversary, Halloween 1936, Bess decided enough was enough. She held one final grand seance.
And this one was public.
Very public. Broadcast live on the radio from the rooftop of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood. The whole world was listening in.
What happened?
The moderator, with all the drama you'd expect from that era, called out into the night, trying to pierce the veil. Houdini, are you here? Speak, Harry.
Silence.
Just silence. The most anticipated message in the world never arrived.
So with the microphone open, broadcasting to a silent listening world, Bess.
Bess, her voice apparently full of grief, but also this ultimate resignation, made her final announcement. She said, Houdini did not come through. My last hope is gone. I now reverently turn out the light. It is finished. Good night, Harry.
And she blew out the candle.
She blew out the candle. His final decade-long silence was maybe his greatest escape of all. Ironically, it served as the definitive ultimate debunking of the entire spiritualist movement he fought so hard against.
He proved, didn't he, that if the greatest master of secrets, the man obsessed with communication, couldn't find a way back.
Then probably no one could.
And there's a final sad irony even in burial, isn't there?
There is. When Bess died in 1943, she couldn't be buried beside him in the Machpelah Cemetery in Queens.
Why not?
Because of the cemetery rules back then regarding mixing Catholic burials. Bess was Catholic, and Jewish burials within the same family plot. It marked this final, sad, structural separation for the couple who had sworn they were inseparable in life, and maybe even after.
So looking back, the king of escapes, the master of all man-made locks, he just failed to escape the trap of his own making, didn't he? The trap of his own need for invincibility.
Yeah, he spent his life conquering fear and frailty, only to have a simple, very human illness win the final battle.
Yeah.
Because he refused to acknowledge its existence until it was far, far too late.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you, the listener, with this final provocative thought to maybe mull over. If even Harry Houdini, the ultimate escape artist, couldn't distinguish between the vulnerable man, Eric Weiss, and the untouchable legend he created, what personal legends or masks do we wear today?
Masks of competence, maybe, or success, or total invulnerability.
Right, masks that might prevent us from slowing down, standing still, admitting we're hurt, and seeking help when we truly, physically, or maybe even emotionally need it.
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.